Thorne asked a ridiculous question. He watched her face for any flicker of reaction. He wanted to see her eyes roll. He wanted to hear a sharp, angry retort. He wanted to confirm his own cynical view of the world. He was looking for a cheap laugh. The room was quiet. The old fan above the counter barely stirred the air. The smell of stale coffee and industrial cleaner hung heavy. How should I spend my next billion? That was the joke. It was a question designed to inflict a brief moment of painful contrast, a way for him to feel superior for one isolated moment in his manic existence. Sarah had worked 2 shifts already. Her feet ached inside her cheap black non-slip shoes. The fluorescent light of the diner made her look older than her 32 years. She had 0 savings. Her entire financial life was built on a fragile foundation of next-day tips. A slow pan over her simple meal setup would reveal a half-eaten tuna sandwich and a glass of water. That was her entire inventory. Thorne expected her to beg. He waited for her to ask for a handout. He expected anger or envy. He thought she would launch into a political tirade about income inequality or the unfairness of the system. Panning shots of the diner's cheap decor would emphasize the chasm between them. The peeling laminate countertop, the faded vinyl booths. But Sarah did none of these things. She didn't sigh. She didn't blink. She simply looked him in the eye. It was a calm, steady, and entirely non-judgmental stare. Thorne felt a strange, momentary discomfort under her gaze. The silence stretched for far too long. He waited for the laugh track to start. It never came. Intense zoom on her face, focusing on her tired but determined eyes. Her first words were not about money at all. They were about the state of his soul. They were about his life. They were about what he had truly forfeited to achieve his financial status. The air felt heavy with unspoken truth. She set down his coffee cup with quiet precision. The soft sound effect of ceramic clinking was loud in the silence. Her voice was low and even. "Sir," she said, "you are broke." The shock was immediate. The massive open loop was closed with a brutal clarity he hadn't prepared for. Thorne was left completely speechless. He was stunned into a thick silence. A wide shot of the silent table would show the incredible tension. The billionaire was stunned. His smug expression evaporated instantly. His face shifted through confusion, then disbelief, then a sudden surge of angry humiliation. Who was this minimum-wage worker to speak to him this way? He slammed his hand lightly on the table. He asked how she dared to say that. He wanted to know what possible metrics she could use to judge him. He was James Thorne. He could buy this entire state. He could buy this whole diner chain before lunch. She spoke slowly and clearly. Her hands were still resting by the sugar dispenser. "It is not about your cash balance," she explained. She articulated the first key point of her philosophy. An animated graphic would flash, "Cash to balance." His cash balance was an illusion of control. It was simply a number on a screen. That number was constantly fluctuating, requiring his frantic, endless attention. "It is about your sleep." She revealed the true measure of wealth, a visual of a calm ocean or deep blue color, peaceful and untroubled. She pointed out his constant stress. She didn't need to ask. She could see the deep lines etched around his eyes. She saw the way his fingers constantly twitched toward his phone. He looked like a man expecting a bomb to drop at any moment. "You came here to mock me," she continued, "but you can't even sit still for a minute. Your body is ready to run from an imaginary threat." She mentioned his debt and leverage. She had read the news stories. She knew how rich men operated. They didn't own things free and clear. They used other people's money. They leveraged assets to the breaking point. Text overlay, $10 billion leverage. He was a debt addict constantly seeking the next injection of borrowed capital. "Every loan you hold owns you," she stated plainly. The visual of chains wrapping around a luxury watch or a clock ticking fast. This was the core of her wisdom. He wasn't the master of his domain. He was the most valuable asset in the bank's portfolio. He was a human collateral. His time, his focus, his peace, all belonged to the institutions that backed his empire. He was legally, financially, and emotionally compromised. His life was not his own. She then provided the crushing contrast. I have nothing but a small car. A visual of Sarah happily driving a beat-up car, windows down, hair blowing free. It breaks down constantly, and I hate the color, she chuckled. But I own it. It was hers completely. It represented a boundary no bank could cross. I also have zero debt. Text overlay. Net zero debt. No student loans. No mortgage. No credit card balances. No monthly payments waiting to steal her peace. When my shift ends, my stress ends, she affirmed. The money is gone, but the worries are packed up too. I sleep 8 hours every night. A visual of a person peacefully asleep, utterly relaxed. She didn't need pills or wine to shut down her brain. Her life was simple, and her liabilities were zero. Her mind was her own. Her time was her own. She was financially poor, but internally wealthy. You are a rich man who is owned. The powerful line would hold the shot. Thorne was a servant to his own empire. He was a prisoner in a golden cage, and he was too busy polishing the bars to notice the lock. I am a poor woman who is free. The statement would hit him like a physical blow. The inspiring music swell would contrast the darkness of his realization. The silence returned, but this time it was different. Thorne suddenly saw his life clearly. The joke was over. The game was finished. He stared blankly out the diner window, seeing not the traffic, but the frantic, ugly reality of his existence. He saw the cold, demanding eyes of his partners in every passing vehicle. He remembered the panic calls at 3 a.m., the phone screaming on his bedside table, forcing him into urgent, high-stakes decisions when he should have been resting. A quick flash of a ringing phone with a terrifying name on the screen. A crisis in Tokyo. A margin call in London. Another company on the brink. Every night was a potential disaster. He remembered skipping his daughter's recital. The thin excuse he had given his ex-wife. It's a critical meeting. The truth was he couldn't afford to be away from the phone for 2 hours. The invisible debt demanded his presence. The regret had been a dull, constant ache he had tried to ignore by signing bigger deals. A faded, melancholic photo of a child in a white dress playing a violin, a moment he could never reclaim. He always chased the next deal. The hunger was insatiable. It was a sickness, not a strategy. The visual of a hamster wheel or constant motion, frantic and meaningless. He never chased peace. Peace was for the weak, he had always believed. Now he saw that peace was the ultimate luxury, a commodity his billions could not purchase. Slow motion, calming visuals would wash over the screen. Sarah's words were the truth. They cut through the noise of his billions. Text overlay, the real balance sheet. The assets column was full, but the liability column was terrifyingly long. It wasn't financial liability, it was life liability. His joke had backfired completely. He hadn't humbled the waitress. She had devastated the billionaire. Thorne slowly lowers his head, nodding almost imperceptibly. The truth felt like a physical weight settling on his shoulders. He was the student, not the teacher. Text, humility. He was a child playing dress-up in a suit worth more than her annual salary, but she possessed a knowledge he entirely lacked. He was a fool who confused his net worth with his self-worth. He realized his plan was flawed. His plan to mock her. His entire life plan was flawed. He reached for his checkbook, his hands still trembling slightly, but now with conviction. Not rage. He wouldn't insult her dignity. He wouldn't mock her quiet wisdom. He was going to leave a fake business card with a joke on the back, a meaningless gesture to remind her of his superiority. He had it ready in his wallet, but the crumpled paper is thrown away into a nearby bin. He wouldn't insult her dignity. Now he wrote a real check, a check that had to matter, a check that acknowledged the magnitude of the lesson she had just given him. A close-up on a check being written out, the pen moving smoothly. He didn't write an insulting tip. He didn't write $20. He didn't even write $2,000. He wrote an investment. He wrote enough to change her life forever. It was a silent apology and a desperate attempt to buy his own peace of mind. A large, significant number is visible on the screen, intentionally blurred but clearly substantial. The check is slid across the table, smoothly resting against the edge of her simple water glass. Sarah looked down at the amount. Her eyes widened slightly, just a momentary flash of surprise, but the composure never breaks. She processes the number, a sum that represented 10 years of her tiring work, a sum that could buy her freedom from this diner. She simply smiled, a small, genuine smile, calm, peaceful expression. She looked from the check to Thorne, a clear understanding in her gaze. Then she did the unthinkable. She pushed the check back. It was the final massive shock moment. The camera would hold on the check sliding back across the faded counter. Thorne blinked. His jaw slackened again. This was a new level of confusion. He had never had anyone refuse his money, ever. He had never met someone who was truly immune to the lure of his wealth. "I accept your advice," she told him, her sincerity radiating across the table. Her eyes were warm and honest. "It was the most valuable thing anyone has given me in years." She looked at the check. "I do not accept your money." She gently places the check next to his hand, making sure he was the one who retained ownership of the paper. She didn't need the burden. She didn't need the complications that sum would introduce. "Keep your leverage, sir," she concluded. It was a short, final phrase, cutting to the heart of the matter. That money represented the same system that had enslaved him. If she took it, she would become tethered to that system too. It would bring tax forms, lawyers, investment decisions, and the loss of her simple sleep. "I choose my freedom." The visual of the sun rising or a peaceful landscape, light and clear. This was the most expensive advice Thorne had ever paid for. He realized she wasn't rejecting the money. She was rejecting the complexity and the hidden cost it carried. Thorne left the diner that morning a different man. He walked out alone, his shadow long in the early light. He felt lighter, paradoxically. The diner sign fades into the distance as he drives away. He never returned to that town. He didn't need to. He had what he needed. The lesson was learned, but he carried her words forever. They echoed in every board meeting. They colored every decision. Text, free versus owned. He began selling his assets. The jets were the first to go, then the non-essential properties. He streamlined his portfolio, shots of simplified living, clean minimalist spaces replacing gilded extravagance. He reduced his complexity. He started paying down debt, not for profit, but for peace of mind. Focus on the concept of less is more, with striking visual simplicity. He found he didn't need $1 billion to be secure. He needed clarity. He needed rest. He needed the freedom that only zero debt could provide. True wealth, he finally understood, is peace, not profit. It is the ability to choose your time. It is the deep, unshakable certainty that no one owns your sleep. It is the quiet dignity of independence. He traded his empire for his life. The man who walked in mocking the poor walked out saved by their wisdom. He gained everything when he chose to give up chasing the next big thing. He found his way back to being an owner of his life, not a slave to his wealth. He finally slept through the night.